2 hours before his own deadline, Trump blinked. A 2-week ceasefire. Iran keeps enrichment. Sanctions lifted. US forces out of the region. And the Strait of Hormuz stays under Iranian coordination. The White House calls it victory. Iran calls it an undeniable, crushing, historic defeat of America. Someone is lying, or both of them are. After almost 40 days of war, and less than 2 hours before his own midnight deadline, US President Donald Trump has announced a 2-week ceasefire with Iran, stepping back from threats that had unsettled governments across the world. Writing on Truth Social, Trump said he had agreed to suspend military operations following calls with Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif and Army Chief Field Marshal Asim Munir, who asked him to hold off. The deal was conditional on Iran reopening the Strait of Hormuz, the waterway through which roughly a fifth of the world's oil passes.
I agree to suspend the bombing and attack of Iran for a period of 2 weeks. This will be a double-sided ceasefire. The reason for doing so is that we have already met and exceeded all military objectives and are very far along with a definitive agreement concerning long-term peace with Iran and peace in the Middle East. We received a 10-point proposal from Iran and believe it is a workable basis on which to negotiate. Almost all of the various points of past contention have been agreed to between the United States and Iran, but a 2-week period will allow the agreement to be finalized and consummated.
Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi followed with a statement on behalf of the Supreme National Security Council, saying Tehran would halt counterattacks and allow passage through the strait, but only in coordination with Iranian armed forces.
If attacks against Iran are halted, our powerful armed forces will stop their defensive operations. For a period of 2 weeks, the passage through the Strait of Hormuz will be possible via coordination with Iran's armed forces and with due consideration of technical limitations.
Pakistan's Prime Minister was the quickest to declare it a success. Sharif posted on X,
"With the greatest humility, I am pleased to announce that the Islamic Republic of Iran and the United States of America, along with their allies, have agreed to an immediate ceasefire everywhere, including Lebanon and elsewhere, effective immediately. I warmly welcome the sagacious gesture and extend deepest gratitude to the leadership of both the countries and invite their delegations to Islamabad on Friday, 10th of April 2026, to further negotiate for a conclusive agreement to settle all disputes."
Israel had a different reading. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office welcomed the suspension of strikes, but pushed back sharply on Sharif's Lebanon claim, saying the ceasefire covered only Iran. Washington, his office added, had assured Tel Aviv it remained committed to their shared goals in the upcoming negotiations. Both Washington and Tehran then moved to claim the outcome as a victory. The White House went first.
"This is a victory for the United States that President Trump and our incredible military made happen. From the very beginning of Operation Epic Fury, President Trump estimated this would be a 4 to 6 week operation."
Tehran offered a starkly different account. Iranian state television declared that the US had suffered an undeniable, historic, and crushing defeat, and that Washington had been forced to accept Iran's 10-point plan in full, including sanctions relief, enrichment rights, and a withdrawal of US combat forces from the region.
Iran has achieved a great victory and forced America, the criminal, to accept Iran's 10-point plan, in which it has, in principle, committed to non-aggression, the continuation of Iran's control over the Strait of Hormuz, acceptance of enrichment, the lifting of all primary and secondary sanctions, the termination of all resolutions of the UN Security Council and the Board of Governors, the payment of compensation to Iran, the withdrawal of US combat forces from the region, and a halt to the war on all fronts, including against the heroic Islamic resistance of Lebanon. We congratulate this victory to all the people of Iran and emphasize that until the finalization of the details of this victory, there remains a need for steadfastness, prudent management by officials, and the preservation of unity and solidarity among the people of Iran.
Ebrahim Azizi, the head of the Iranian Parliament's National Security Commission, went even further, saying that the United States never really had an option but to surrender.
We told you from the start there is no option but to surrender to Great Iran.
Whether the temporary beginning will result in a lasting settlement or simply a pause before a second round depends entirely on what happens in Islamabad and whether either side believes it actually won. The latest wave of US-Israeli strikes is pushing the Iran conflict into a far more dangerous phase, with nuclear sites now at the center of the battlefield. Iran's atomic agency has issued a defiant message. Even heavy bombs will not stop its nuclear program.
US-Israeli attack on Ardakan yellowcake plant in Yazd is a blatant violation of the immunity of peaceful nuclear facilities, targeting the reactor fuel supply chain and nuclear medicine. Iran's nuclear tech serves global peace and human health, a path heavy bombs will never halt.
But on the ground, the risks are rapidly escalating. The International Atomic Energy Agency has confirmed that recent strikes landed alarmingly close to the Bushehr nuclear power plant, the country's only operational nuclear reactor. One impact point was just around 75 meters from the facility's perimeter, though the reactor itself remains intact.
Based on its independent analysis of new satellite imagery and detailed knowledge of the site, the IAEA can confirm recent impacts of military strikes close to Iran's Bushehr nuclear power plant, including one just 75 meters from the site perimeter.
The warning from global nuclear authorities is stark. The IAEA says continued military activity near such a site poses a very real danger of a radiological disaster that could spread beyond Iran's borders. Russia, which has a long-standing involvement in the Bushehr facility, has been evacuating its personnel from the site, signaling growing alarm over the safety of the reactor and surrounding infrastructure. Iran has gone further, warning of a serious risk of radioactive contamination if strikes continue near Bushehr, raising fears of a potential environmental crisis in the Gulf region. Earlier on April 5th, Araghchi wrote to UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres, condemning US-Israeli strikes on Iran's nuclear infrastructure, including the Bushehr nuclear plant. Araghchi warned that strikes near Bushehr risk radioactive contamination with severe human and environmental consequences.
The strikes expose the entire region to a serious risk of radioactive contamination with serious human and environmental consequences. The repeated attacks by the aggressors in the vicinity of the active Bushehr nuclear power plant are of great concern. The proximity of these attacks to an active nuclear facility creates an intolerable situation that poses a serious risk of a radiological release.
The strikes are not isolated. In Isfahan, a key hub for Iran's nuclear and military infrastructure, recent air defense operations turned deadly. At least 4 Iranian army officers were killed while responding to incoming attacks, underscoring how deeply the conflict is penetrating sensitive strategic zones. This dual targeting of nuclear-linked regions, Bushehr in the south and Isfahan in the center, signals a shift. What began as broader military strikes is now increasingly intersecting with Iran's nuclear architecture. And yet Tehran is doubling down. Officials argue that sustained bombing cannot dismantle Iran's nuclear program, describing it as dispersed, fortified, and technologically resilient. But that raises a critical question. If strikes cannot halt the program, what is the objective of targeting areas near nuclear facilities? Critics warn the strategy risks triggering a nuclear safety crisis without delivering meaningful strategic gains. Even near misses could disrupt power systems, damage containment structures, or compromise safety mechanisms, with consequences far beyond the battlefield. The International Atomic Energy Agency has reiterated that nuclear sites must never be targeted. Yet recent strikes near Bushehr suggest that the boundary is being dangerously tested. The human toll is already evident, with a projectile near the facility killing a security staff member and damaging infrastructure. The conflict is now entering a volatile phase. Iran signals its nuclear ambitions will endure, while continued strikes heighten the risk of a catastrophic radiological incident that could reshape the region.